Hey folks, this is Rhykker, bringing you a Diablo 3 patch 2.41 Demon Hunter build that is currently topping the leaderboards on the PTR. Variants of this build have cleared as high as Greater Rift 96, and I'm sure by the time I get this video up, it'll have gone even further. Now, bear in mind that the PTR is always subject to change, so do check back when patch 2.41 goes live to find out how this build may have changed due to balance changes made during the PTR, and also follow along with the written guide on the Escapist and Diablo fans, whose links you can find in the description below. Now, this build makes use of the buffed Marauders and Shadow sets, and requires you to wear 4 pieces of Marauders and 2 pieces of Shadows. It doesn't matter which items go in which slot, as long as you have 2 Shadows and 4 Marauders. The 2-piece set bonus of Shadows now increases your damage by 1,200% while you have a melee weapon equipped. As for the Marauders, the 2-piece bonus calls all companions to your side instead of just the one selected by your rune, and the 4-piece bonus makes your sentries deal 400% increased damage instead of 300, and they'll cast certain skills when you do. In this case, Chakram. The weapon we'll want is the Sword of Ill Will. Chakram deals more damage for every point of hatred you have. So for this build, we want to maximize the amount of hatred we have. For our offhand, we want the Bombardier's Rucksack. For our belt, we'll want Zoe's Secret. You take up to 9% less damage for every companion you have active. Now, 5 runes equals 5 companions, so that's up to 45% damage reduction, but we're going to boost that even higher by including in our cube the Cloak of the Garwolf. With the cloak, Wolf Companion now summons 3 wolves instead of just 1. That brings us to a total of 7 companions, and a total of 63% damage reduction. But we're going to boost that damage reduction even higher with our Wraps of Clarity. Your hatred generators reduce your damage taken by 35% for 5 seconds. To round out the build, we'll throw in Focus and Restraint in order to benefit from over double damage. And lastly, a Hellfire Amulet will be your best in slot in order to gain an extra passive. Your ideal gems will be Bane of the Trapped, Zay's Stone of Vengeance, which has received a buff, and Bane of the Powerful, which has also received a buff. It now also decreases damage dealt by elites, and it is now a multiplicative damage modifier. The TLDR on that is that the 20% damage increase is now significant, whereas in the past it was not. We won't go into the exact stats you want optimally on every piece of gear, but do check out the guide on the Escapist and Diablo fans, as we'll try to keep those updated with the optimum stats. In short though, get Chakram damage wherever you can, get Sentry damage wherever you can, get crit damage and crit chance wherever you can, and get physical skill damage wherever you can. Also in our cube, we'll want a Dawn that will allow us to have permanent vengeance, and for added damage, a convention of elements. Now let's take a look at our skills to see how this playstyle comes together. You'll note that we have Vengeance Seethe. That 10 hatred per second will keep us capped off at max hatred just about at all times. And if it's not, our primary attack will ensure that happens. With a little bit of cooldown reduction and a Dawn in our cube, we will maintain 100% uptime on Vengeance. Our main attack will be Chakram Razor Disc. Razor Disc makes the Chakram spiral out from the targeted location, so while it might not be the highest damage dealing rune, it does tend to result in the most damage dealt because your Chakrams are actually hitting their targets, and you're able to keep a considerable distance away. You're going to want Vault Tumble for mobility and to get out of harm's way, because even with all that damage reduction, you're still pretty squishy. You'll want Companion, Wolf Companion, and of course, you'll want Sentry. Now, I've seen people use different runes on Sentry. The 3 options I've seen include Polar Station, Spitfire Turret, and Guardian Turret. Polar Station is the most popular choice. Polar Station serves as a slow effect, and that'll be important to proccing our Cull the Weak passive and our Bane of the Trapped gem. If you're using Polar Station, you definitely want to be placing your sentries near the enemies that you're going to be attacking. Another option I saw was Guardian Turret. This turret produces a shield that grants you even more damage reduction. In this case, you would want to be standing next to the turret. The third option is Spitfire Turret. This turret will also shoot out homing rockets. Now, if you take Spitfire Turret or Guardian Turret, then you need to find some other way, apart from Polar Station, to slow your enemies. For your primary attack, you want Bolas Bitter Pill. You'll want to cast this once every 5 seconds, in order to proc your focus and restraint, and your Wraps of Clarity, and to regain Discipline. This build does not use preparation, so you can find yourself running through Discipline pretty quickly. For your passives, you'll want Cull the Weak. This gives you a huge bonus against slowed or chilled enemies. You'll want Custom Engineering to allow you to have more sentries and buff their duration. You'll want Steady Aim, because that's been given a buff to now be multiplicative with other damage sources. If you do not have Polar Station, you'll want the Thrill of the Hunt passive, because this will be what'll be proccing your Cull the Weak and Bane of the Trapped. And you'll want Awareness to survive at the higher Greater Rifts. If you have a Hellfire Amulet, and thus a 5th passive, Ambush will give you some more additional damage. But I've seen people with Spitfire Turret use Ballistics. For Paragon Points, standard rules apply. Make sure your movement speed totals 25 across all sources, then max out maximum resource in order to up our hatred, then dump everything into primary stat. For Paragon, crit chance, crit damage, attack speed, defense, all resist, life, armor, utility, resource cost reduction, area damage, life on hit. As we close off, I'll remind you that this is all currently on the PTR, so everything is subject to change. Do check back in the future when patch 2.41 goes live to find out if there have been any modifications to this build. You can also check the written guides in the description below, which will be kept up to date. That wraps up this guide. Thanks for watching. Check out these other videos. And if you enjoyed this one, share with friends, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders.
You are Rhykker Discipline.
To find out how you can get me to say something random at the end of my videos, check out my Patreon rewards.